They came home shot full of holes too numerous to count, with chunks of engine missing and hydraulic fluid bleeding through gaping tears in their aluminum skin. Love them or hate them, nobody's ever questioned the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt's ability to bring a pilot back safely.
It absorbed, as I said, a tremendous amount of damage and would still fly. The inline engine wouldn't absorb anything. The radial engine, you know, we had cases of people losing several cylinders and still coming back.
They would really take, like I said, really take a beating from being shot up or anything, more than any other aircraft. They were really a tough bird.
There was one case when was waiting for takeoff and a plane came in and landed, and it had been hit in the engine, and one piston was flipping up and down in the air, and the other piston was gone, and the plane flew in and landed, and the guy pulled off the runway. He didn't taxi it, and he got out.
47 was a great airplane for that. It absorbed tremendous damage and, you know, would still fly. The group commander took it through a tree. Literally, the aircraft went through, the tree was the loser, and the wings didn't come off, but, you know, he just forgot what he was flying and what altitude he was at and went through a pretty large tree. Lots of damage, structural damage on the wings, but the aircraft came home. I don't think that I know a 51 wouldn't have done it. I don't think a 40 or I don't think a 38 would have done it. So it was that kind of an aircraft.
I had dropped my bomb, done my job. I headed home. I get back and I land, and people are running alongside the aircraft pointing it as I taxied. And I lean out and look, and the whole side is covered with oil. And when I got out, I got a hole a foot big in the engine and 2 cylinders missing. But it ran fine.
For 2 critical years, the P-47 Thunderbolt served as the backbone of the U.S. Army Air Force's fighter force, battling on every front in every conceivable climate and terrain. The P-47 played a major role in the defeat of the Luftwaffe in the skies of Europe. Yet since the end of World War II, the P-47 has been overshadowed by the fame and glamour of the Lockheed P-38 and North American P-51 Mustang.
I think it's comparing a racehorse to a plow horse. The P-47 was I think you could describe it as the bare knuckles brawler. It wasn't the sleek thoroughbred as the Spitfire. It wasn't the graceful, you know, pre-war design of the P-38 that was like the Buck Rogers fighter plane of World War II. I mean, the P-38 was what everybody dreamed of. The Thunderbolt, I think, what endeared itself most of all to the pilots was the fact that it had tremendous firepower. It could carry a huge load for ground support, which is exactly what it was best at, I think. And it could take incredible amounts of battle damage. I mean, you've seen pictures of airplanes that have hit trees. They've got cylinders knocked off the engines. The cowling's gone. The wings are canted back. Just the leading edge of the wings are just beat off. The gun barrels are torn from the airplane, and it flies all the way home and brings the pilot back. I think that is the greatest quality of the airplane.
By war's end, over 15,600 P-47s had been produced, more than any other American aircraft save the consolidated B-24 Liberator. Even today, the P-47 Thunderbolt inspires intense emotions amongst the pilots assigned to fly it. After sharing the air with a 47, a pilot either came back a devoted convert or appalled that Republic ever designed such a monstrous fighter.
When I took my training, I took it at Bradley Field in Connecticut, and there were P-40 pilots that were there, and they didn't fly with you, and all they did was check you out. And they weren't really too enthused with the P-47. So when I went overseas, I did not want to fly the P-47. I wanted to get out of the 38s or 51s. When I got to this base, a P-47 came over there, and he went across that base. He pulled up and did one roll, and we just were in awe, you know. My God, that thing will fly. And I went from 1 inch tall to 10 foot tall.
It was a great experience looking back on it, flying the 47. It was a very forgiving aircraft, and the work that we flew it, used it for, was great. But, you know, it's like anything. A driver of a car, airplane drivers are the same way. You fall in love with something, and you don't want to trade. You don't want to get rid of the things. And, you know, we weren't smart enough to know that, well, it's probably going to save your life many more times than the 38 might, because it's not as vulnerable as an inline engine aircraft, whether it's a 40, 51, or 38, but it still was not my first love by any means.
The models that I flew were very sluggish in climbing. In fact, I didn't consider it very good until you got to higher altitude, you know, where your supercharged engine was a big advantage. I think a fighter pilot would probably live longer in a P-47 than any other fighter. It's more rugged by far than any other fighter. And we only had them for a short time. They gave us our P-40s, or we were flying P-40s at the time, all the time that we were transitioning into the 47s, and they just decided to take the P-47s away and let us continue with the P-40s. And I think we were all happy about that.
Love or hate the P-47, everyone agreed on one thing. It was the toughest fighter ever built. Practically everyone who flew the Thunderbolt has a story to tell about its legendary durability. They speak of holes hacked out of the wing by light flak that were so big ground crewmen posed with their heads poking through them. Others remember cannon shells severing controls, tearing great gouges out of the cowling. They remember feeling the thumping of bullets as they slammed into the armor plating behind their seat. And they remember thanking God and Republic for building the P-47 like a brick outhouse, tough enough to handle the dirtiest of dirty work, and built to survive a Kansas tornado. The P-47 owes its genesis to a Russian emigre-turned-aircraft designer named Alexander de Seversky. He had come to the United States between the wars and had started his own aircraft company in the 1930s.
He was a Russian immigrant who flew during World War I and was a great proponent of pursuit aviation. The P-35 was his original fighter. Low wing, all metal, retractable landing gear. The second aircraft was the P-43 Lancer, which was a further refinement of the P-35 design. The ultimate was the P-47, which was the final derivative.
Just before World War II, Seversky Aviation